It's fun. One. No way, dude. And it gripped him over. What is up, guys? Killchain here, and the 10.0 Dragonflight Prepatch is up on the PTR at the moment, and a great opportunity to check out your new talent trees that you're going to be dealing with, especially in Prepatch. Keep in mind though, naturally we don't have all of the points. We'll be missing 5 from our class tree and 5 from our actual spec tree as well, so they do feel a little incomplete, but that's what we're going to be dealing with in the Prepatch. Today's video, as a warrior, we're going to be checking out a single-minded Fury build. Alrighty, so we're going to take a look at the talents. Before we jump in though real quick, do keep in mind that Titan's Grip with the two-handers is designed to be better optimized than an SMF build. The reality is the developers even want SMF to be a little bit behind, but while being an easier playstyle, because Titan's Grip and Fury typically is quite a high APM build, super fast, spammy kind of a playstyle, and they wanted SMF to sort of fill the shoes of a slower playstyle for Fury that isn't going to be quite as, matching in terms of DPS and throughput and things like that. Unfortunate reality is in the PTR as of right now, both testing on a dummy as well as about 5 or 6 dungeons through the dungeon finder and everything. Yeah, single-minded Fury plays the exact same. It's just as fast-paced, just as spammy. In a Titan's Grip build, you're spamming Raging Blows with the occasional Onslaught and then dumping your Rage on Rampage. Whereas in an SMF build, you're spamming Bloodthirst with the occasional Slam and then spending Rage on Rampage. So they play identically. It's just SMF was obviously built a lot around bleeds and stuff like that. So that kind of passive style of, damage over time and that kind of thing. The unfortunate reality is that passive style still requires maintaining, and that is super fast paced. So it's like really bizarre and weird. So they haven't quite hit the mark, but it's still really fun, and it's an interesting different concept of, how you throughput your damage and stuff and having all the bleeds on there. So without further ado, let's have a look at the build itself. I've already built out what I plan to sort of play on and different tweaks and whatnot. However, I'd rather kind of build it up together so you can get an idea of thought processes as we go along. So with that in mind, starting on the class side, we pick up anything that's throughput. So War Machine, it's cool that we actually get this as a part of our building path rather than just always being ignored entirely. We want some Leech, we're going to get some movement speed, honed reflexes, or much as the pummel reduction is nice, I suppose. The Raging Blows are relevant in this case, which is a bit of a shame, but we need it for pathing anyway. Okay, we'll just deal with it. Furious Blows, auto attack speed, happy days. This is kind of your best bet you're going to go for. We do not pick up Thunderclap at all. The only time you'd ever want to pick up Thunderclap is if you're going for Blood and Thunder. The Crackling Thunder does nothing. It just increases radius and reduces movement speed further by an extra 10%. Literally pointless, like, well, why? Okay. Whereas Blood and Thunder, really cool, powerful, spread your bleeds around. Unfortunately, it only works with Rend, so for Fury, literally irrelevant. It would be so cool if they made Blood and Thunder work with any bleeds you had on the target. It would immediately become like BIS must take for an SMF build. But as it stands right now, being only Rend, it's dead. So don't ever pick Thunderclap. There's no point getting Thunderclap if you're not getting Blood and Thunder, as you'd get the idea. But that leaves us with 3 points to sort of pick on some utility, and I love this about the warrior class tree. It's really cool that you get a few mandatory things that you want for throughput and damage, and then you're left with a lot of choices that you can make for utility based on what you need. Yes, it's kind of lame that you can't get it all, but no, I think that this is a prime example of when choice is nice to have rather than the arbitrary feeling of choice, even though everyone just picks the same best in slot, highest DPS Covenant, for example. So with these choices that actually do matter, Impending Victory, yes, it got nerfed by 10%. It used to be a 40% health pool heal, whereas now it's only 30%. Still very strong, well worth picking up. Heroic Leap as well, pretty standard mobility that I don't think I could live without, and I think it's going to be pretty prevalent in any Fury Warrior kit. Lastly, again, you could pick up Spell Reflection if you wanted. If you want to go down Berserker Rage and get Berserker Shout, we do have an AoE fear totem now, so basically a trauma totem. We can break everyone out of a fear. It's probably not super useful 90% of the time, but it's cool that we have an option to dip in there if it ever is needed on a particular raid fight or something like that. awesome. The final point though, I'm going to be dipping into defensive stance. So really powerful cooldown, 20% damage reduction. Typically used to be only an arms warrior thing, if I recall. I remember back in BFA as well, it was like, yeah, you dip into defensive whenever you're taking too much damage in Mythic Plus, or big raid cooldowns, for example. You know, big AoE nuke is coming on the group. Dip into defensive stance, help your healers out by not taking as much damage, then duck straight back out and go into your typical damage stance and continue on about your day. So yeah, we're going to pick up that one. We also want to get down the heroic leap path. Bounding stride if you just want, you know, reduce cooldown and a bit more mobility. However, we do have an AoE grip now. It's probably like a day, but it felt like an hour into finally getting this AoE grip, it immediately got nerfed. So although you're reading it as 5 random targets with a 15-yard radius right now, which again on a 45-second cooldown is amazing. The unfortunate part is it's already been nerfed. It's now increases our cooldown by 45 seconds, making it a 1.5 minute cooldown, which means we literally have to sacrifice our you know, like mobility to have a way longer cooldown just for the grip aspect. It only works for 10-yard range instead of 15 yards, and that's really borderline to being kind of lame. And then the cherry on top is it only does 4 enemies instead of 5 now. So it feels a bit, yeah, after having this cool thing and then the toys are taken away from you, but I'd still pick it up. Like I said, you have a decent choice to make there if you just want a little bit more mobility, whatever the case may be. We do want to pick up Crushing Force. Slam actually forms a very big part of our build. Likewise, on the other side, we want to pick up Barbaric Training for the same reason, and Sidearm, and Seismic Reverberation. So in terms of AoE, if ever we need to do it, Whirlwind is our primary and only source of AoE that we're really going to be pumping out, while Sidearm, you know, helps passively just cleave onto some people. Sidearm's actually doing pretty decent in AoE damage. It's not great, but it's like better than I expected. So that's, yeah, it's putting in work, definitely. So we're picking up that, and then we have 6 points remaining. We do want to get Frothing Berserker as typical standard. Concussive Blows, it's really cool that we have a positive feedback loop for doing a successful interrupt now. So now, just like Havoc, Demon Hunters and all that, we get damage buff for 10 seconds when we do a successful pummel. So yay. And between these two, we have gotten reduction on our pummel by 1.5 seconds, which is kind of nice, I suppose. And first time we ever get to pick double time and impending victory at the same time. Yay, awesome. But once again, we're left with these 3 points that we can really, you know, pick on whatever utility we need. We do immunity if there's a raid fight that has a lot of like your damage over time effects. This will massively help out healers, for example, when it comes to cleansing. We can get another throw if we really needed to, just do more range damage if we wanted. We've got the access to the stun if we want. We do have, and this is probably well worth keeping an eye on, Overwhelming Rage. It really boils down to how your secondary stats are sitting and how much you're rage capping, if at all. If you're ever capping out on rage a lot, then by all means, increasing your rage pool is going to mean way more rampages than you would typically get, because the bigger pool you've got to work with, then less gaining of rage that you need at the top end to do your next rampage, right? So yeah, really handy if you are rage capping. Kind of pointless if you're not rage capping, so it's really going to boil down to your own personal preference. You could pick that up, otherwise you've got the opportunity once again to go into Rallying Cry and get Inspiring Presence. Intervene, I mean, for me, I'm going to go Intervene purely because I love being able to speed around the battle, being able to duck out of a you know, big AoE on the ground or whatever, because, you know, you've got decent mobility cruising around to all your allies and everything. And that will tick us down into the final tier. Now keep in mind, being level 60 and for the pre-patch, we're not going to get 2 capstone talents like you will be able to once you're at max level. You're only going to be able to invest in 1. So while it would be cool to have Thunderous Roar and Spear of Bastion for Mythic Plus, for example, just like big dick AoE moments, unfortunately we can't really invest in that for now. We only get 1, so we're going to go Thunderous Roar. We do want to pick up Dual Spec because, yeah, extra damage, why not? Quick Thinking, at least this is a beneficial double point talent. More haste, more attack speed, happy days, perfect for SMF build. Thunderous Roar, picking up the 1 minute cooldown there. We do have the ability to reduce it by a further 30 seconds. That should actually be 1.5 minute. It's looking deceptively weird. It was a 1.5 minute. It should be a 1.5 minute. And then this makes it a 1 minute. And then finally, Thunderous Words. The increased duration on the bleed, awesome, but more importantly, the increase of damage of your bleed effects by 20%. That is huge, especially given that, you know, we're Thunderous Roaring, we've got Odin's Fury, we've got the Hot Steel Cold Blood from our Bloodthirst, and it really helps set that up. If you're ever going to pull out a point at all because you needed to get another utility like a Spell Reflect, or as you start going down to Avatar route, once you hit level 70, the point to pull is Uproar. The reduced cooldown is not really that important because that will make this go back up to 1.5 minute cooldown, even though it deceptively still only says 1 minute, because that'll line up perfectly with Odin's Fury being on a 45-second cooldown. So that's the point you would pull, but for now, we'll run that. Now over to the Fury side. Again, the left side is the whole section of all the SMF stuff. We're picking up the 2 mandatory points we have to get. We're gonna go Improved Execute, pick up Enrage Regen, Improved Enrage, and Warpaint is a very stock standard. We really want to get Invigorating Fury. Probably gonna have to wait until max level to get that, unfortunately. For now, we'll pick up Sudden Death for more damage. Fresh Meat, again, very close to borderline not being needed. Reason why is there's so many other talents that will help increase and keep your Enrage uptime that I'm kind of sitting on the fence about whether I need to bother getting it, because there's other things that would probably give you more damage. But now we're going to pick it up. It's fun. Now, Focusing Chaos, bit weird with the wording, but as my understanding, I mean, we need to get it anyway because that's the SMF side. We need it for pathing. But in terms of what it does is, as far as I'm aware, no penalty for the dual wording means that when you're enraged, like, there's no glancing blows or anything like that, like all that weird offhandy situation stuff. I think that's what it's referring to. So, okay, we'll pick it up. SMF, obviously, Frenzied Flurry. This is one of the main reasons why I think that we might not need Fresh Meat, because we can completely take away that point out. It doesn't affect any of our pathing, and it gives us an extra point for something else further down the line. So I'm still unsure about that, but we'll have a look at it. Prime reason is Frenzied Flurry. It makes your auto attacks, when they crit, they have a 50% chance to further enrage you. And you're attacking very, very fast with the SMF build. There's a lot of haste increases and things like that. Cold Steel, Hot Blood, amazing. Bloodborne increases all your damage from your bleeds. Literally amazing, must have. Vicious Contempt, amazing as well. It gives you really top end damage when it comes down to the enraged section. So even Massacre would be a great pickup here, which is why I'm hoping I can piss off this Fresh Meat talent. We definitely want Rampage as always. Slaughtering Strikes, another must take for an SMF build. Makes Annihilator stack up your next rampaging damage, so it stacks up to 5 times. When you run a TG build, you'll only ever get maybe 2, maybe 3 stacks by the time you'd have enough rage to do a rampage. And you don't really want to be sitting on your rampage pool going, oh, I'm going to do a couple more raging blows just to get the full 5 stacks before you rampage. Whereas on Annihilator, they just proc off your auto attacks. Your auto attacking so fast that every time you can rampage, you have bare minimum 4 stacks, if not the full 5 stacks. And if you do have 4, you're waiting half a second and then suddenly you've got 5 stacks. Like, it's amazing. Definitely a must have for this build. Picking up Recklessness as well. No point getting Hack and Slash and Frenzy, another pickup that I hope to be able to get at 70. Maybe not worth it to begin with for now. We'll see how we go. In terms of the talent, Skull Banner, just don't look at it for now. It's so dumb. You might think it looks great on paper, but the reality is having such a short duration, such a long cooldown, and the fact that it only helps allies within 20 yards, it's a bit of a no bueno in my opinion. But especially when combined with the other side, which is Blood Craze, you super want Blood Craze because it means more blood crits, which means more Cold Steel procs. You get the idea. It's pretty much well mandatory. Lastly, we're going to path down and go Odin's Fury. We're not going to pick up any of these. This is more of a level 70 section. But Storm of Swords, like I mentioned over here, with all the increase to Whirlwind and Slam and everything like that, all those increases we got there. You can see here that it will now apply a cooldown to Whirlwind and Slam, but they do way more damage and actually generate rage. Super important. Basically the defining capstone talent that allows all this to function the way that it does. And then we pick up Annihilator. Now you'll see Annihilator literally replaces Raging Blow, so we don't do Raging Blows at all anymore, but auto attacks do a bit of extra damage, yay. But the important part is all those auto attacks stack up our Slaughtering Strikes, which makes Rampage do big damage. And that's all our points. So as you can see, we're sort of stuck And this is where I'm really hoping that maybe fresh meat might not be as prevalent, in which case we could go into massacre and then build out the rest as typically normal. Which means that your 35% and lower execute phase is going to be pumping. We're going to be getting big massacre execute damage because we can do it from 35% instead. It reduces its cooldown, so we're pumping it out even more. We've got the improved execute, which is, as we know now, no longer costs rage and generates rage instead. Sudden death will help us throughout the outside of massacre phase basically, but 35% reduction to the 35% and lower health. Bloodthirst deals more damage as well, which is obviously one of your primary spam build. Yeah, execute phase on an SMF build could be really strong. That's what I would rather push for. I'm just hoping that fresh meat isn't mandatory, but that's the build. That's what we're sort of going for. Next step though, what I do want to check out is specifically looking at what the build will look like once we get to max level. So we're going to check out the level 70 version of this over on Wowhead as well. All right, so now as you can see, we're over on the Wowhead talent creator tool for Dragonflight. We've set up everything to be exactly as we have it at level 60. And now, as you can see at the top, we have 5 points to spend on the class side and 5 points to spend on the spec side. So with that in mind, for this particular build, we're gonna run down. We can pull out Uproar, but run down Armored to the Teeth, picking up Avatar and getting the Tormented Titan. So this particular one will recast Odin's Fury, which when we combine with the new talent we'll pick up on Dancing Blades. Again, we don't know what the other talent choice node will be, but for now, that will mean that it will proc your Odin's Fury again, which means more uptime on your 30% attack speed increase, yay. But we have a couple more choices, I guess, to go. So we have the option of obviously going into Cruel Strikes. I don't like that it increases Raging Blow, so it's kind of a little bit of one of those, what are you going to do? Ultimately, once again, it just boils down to, all right, well, where are we going with this? Do we feel like we need more rage for our pool? Do we want, Spell Reflect? Choices everywhere. I mean, it might be nice to get an extra one of these, but yeah, whatever the case may be, if you want some more range, if you want the armor increased by 20%, which will directly help your Armored to the Teeth section, you could always pick that up. You get a start, whatever you need. You've got a couple of wiggle room. For me, I'm just assuming maybe 1 point in the range and 1 point into the Armored still, because it will help the Armored to the Teeth talent because you're getting more armor out of it. So yeah, and it makes you a bit tankier as well. Now, when it comes to the actual Fury spec side, this is where it gets interesting because we can now pick up the Dancing Blades like I mentioned. Then we can pick up our Frenzy finally, probably pick up Invigorating Fury. I think that's going to be a nice pickup. Do you want to try and go down to Anger Management? That's sort of the question. The fact that you're sinking 2 points into it, as much as I could say, all right, no Invigorating Fury, no Frenzy, let's just purely sink down into trying to get, you probably want Reckless Abandon. Reckless Abandon does much nicer on the Bloodthirst, and then probably picking up the Rampage reduces your chance. You could pull this off to get triple capstones. It really depends on how Frenzy. I don't think fresh meat is actually going to be mandatory at all. It's a good talent to have just in case, but I genuinely do not believe that fresh meat is going to be needed. This really boils down to, do you need the extra defensive capability? I don't know. It'll depend on trial and error, how you personally as a player play, how good your healers are, a lot of different variations from that. The part that hurts the soul is just not getting Frenzy. I think Frenzy would be a really strong pickup, but I also think getting Reckless Abandon and Unbridled Ferocity is naturally just going to be better. So you're already attacking like a madman on this particular build anyway. Perhaps the extra haste isn't really that required. Yeah, this is what I would run for me personally. I think it'll pump out pretty decent damage. The only thing I would change is probably dipping these 4 points out of here and then into Spear of Bastion. So if we wanted to have a look at exactly what that would look like, we can go into there, which makes us want to vomit because it increases Raging Blow crit damage, which is pointless and stupid, but hey, sometimes we've got to do what we've got to do. And we'll pick up our Spear of Bastion and a Legion Might. This will help with an AoE build instead. Never ever pick Piercing Verdict. The increased front load damage of it, instant damage, is barely noticeable. We're talking about going from like 6k to 9k, which when we're talking about 80k DPS for a big nuke on an AoE pack, the increase in it's just not really that crazy. And the rage generation, okay. Yeah, it's not really the be all and end all. In fact, that's one of the prominent reasons why it's not even run as a conduit anymore. Yeah, there's just better conduits that we run in current Shadowlands, and a Legion Might is just far superior. And that's what you could run for an AoE build, especially when, again, you're pumping out a lot of this cool Odin's Fury, big AoE bleed, your Whirlwind is buffed out the arse, and then combine that with Spear of Bastion and do a nice big thunderous roar. Hopefully it should be a pretty decent AoE. And yeah, they're the only two things I would change in that pathing. So again, you could just dip out of there, go into there, and pick up Tormented for your single target. And I don't think this would ever have to change. It would really boil down to how important Frenzy is if that ends up simming high. But yeah, that's kind of the build. That's how we'll look at level 70. I love that, you know, there's tweaks and changes that can be made based off, you know, a couple of defensive or utility options that we may or may not want. All right, just to briefly touch on the rotation, I know I had mentioned it earlier. Obviously it's just sort of a 3-button priority list essentially, but you will notice that when you are recklessnessing, yeah, you know what I mean. When you have recklessness up, that's when overwhelming rage really feels important. And so that's where you got to make that decision, right? Whether or not you want to pull that extra rage or not. Probably would be worth, I mean, again, you'd have to dip out of that and then go down and rebuild everything as you'd want. Let's get out of combat and we'll do just that. Just so you can see the significant difference for it. So we need to get out of combat, apply changes. And yeah, you'll really notice quite a better time while Reckless is up, but that's what you sort of have to chop and change your mind. So you'll see we're just Bloodthirst spamming essentially anytime it's up. It's only got a 2.5 second cooldown with all the different cooldown reductions. Slam has an 8 second cooldown, so you essentially want to throw that in whenever you can. You've got your Rampage to be popping off on as well. Sudden death procs, typical gameplay you sort of deal with at the moment. No different than Titan's Grip basically, literally. And yeah, and then our cooldowns will be what differs, I suppose, a little bit, because it will be based on Thunderous Roar and Odin's Fury doing bleed damage and big upfront damage as well. So that's essentially what we're relying on. You'll notice as well that the uptime on the Gushing Runes from WotC is really low. You're going to be probably stacking heavy crit, honestly. Yeah, you're going to want crits from those Bloodthirsts. It's happened a few times, but not enough to write home about, honestly. Whereas the more crit you get, the more, yeah, you're going to want those hot blood, cold steel, hot blood, whatever, yeah, that stuff. And then naturally you have Recklessness as well. Recklessness also increases your crit chance, so that'll help out your Bloodthirst a little bit as well. Everything feels definitely faster while you're going crazy on your Bloodthirst, so something to keep in mind. And naturally you have your typical defensive cooldown with Enrage and Regen if you ever needed it. And while you're AoEing as well, the only difference is we're dumping AoE on Whirlwind instead of Rampage. So outside of that, it is going to feel a little bit different because you can actually get off one Rampage in between while waiting for the cooldown, and you'll still have enough rage when you're using the extra rage pool to also then turn around and make sure, yeah, you Whirlwind every so often. Nowhere near as powerful as TG, unfortunately. It just is what it is. But yeah, you'll just be pumping these out as much as you can, and Rampage whenever you're down, and then you'll still have your big AoE from your 2 bleed effects that'll help pump out decent AoE damage through bleeds and that as well. So, and that's, yeah, you're pretty much all your AoE rotation. Nothing too crazy. Definitely, I can see how they're trying to go for a more simpler spec because they're just relying on you essentially just spamming Bloodthirst, right? But then the most optimal way of playing the suboptimal way of playing, if that makes sense, is still going to be, yeah, pretty comparative to how TG plays ultimately. The AoE prowess isn't really there because while, you know, Whirlwind does okay, it's just not as prominent as a TG spec, unfortunately. So it is what it is. But beyond that though, yeah, very fun. I like the mixing up of, just feels different, you know, having more bleeds. It's really cool to have things like Odin's Fury and stuff back. I love that a couple of the talent synergizations that we never got before, talent synergies, sorry. Things like, you know, impending victory and double time at the same time, things like that. Yeah, really fun. Definitely a build I'm keeping an eye on just to see how it pans out. Once you hit 70, like I said, those talent changes will help, you know, fix some of those gaps, so to speak. And it will be interesting to see how it works. But yeah,